So I think it's fair to say that Pokemon Sword and Shield has been under some pretty harsh controversy lately. From people upset about Game Freak's decision to not have every Pokemon appear in-game, to recycled Pokemon animations and oddly outdated tree bark textures, the issues never seem to end. The truth of it is that fans are upset with the direction that the series is taking during this turning point period for the franchise as we get the first mainline console Pokemon game. While a lot of people are seemingly outraged by these choices, today I want to take a step back on this whole situation. I mean, is it really that bad? What reasons are motivating Game Freak to act the way they are? And what will the future of the series look like? The short answer is, there is some hope in all this disappointment. The long answer is, well, let's just talk about the Pokemon problem. This is in defense of Pokemon Sword and Shield. Hello everybody, my name is Skullkid, and in today's discussion video, we're talking about the Pokemon problem. That's right, these are my opinions on the whole Pokemon controversy, and how I feel about the choices made by Game Freak for the Pokemon series moving forward. We're gonna take a look at how they're generally handling this situation and much more, so let's get to it. Now, before I get to that, however, if you're new around the channel, just know that I do gaming discussions just like this one every month here on the channel. If you're up to check out some more, I've got a growing backlog of discussion videos for you to check out. So if that seems like your fancy, consider subscribing to Skullkid Gaming for a whole lot more discussions, unboxings, indie game showcases, and a whole lot more. Simply click that subscribe button to become part of this small, lovely gaming community. Now, this Pokemon controversy has pretty much been going around every couple of weeks since E3 2019. There we got the big hitter, the arrow to strike the Achilles heel of every hardcore Pokemon fan. So during E3, the producer of the Sword and Shield games, Junichi Masuda, announced that not all Pokemon would be coming in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Now, of course, this made many people mad, not being able to bring their beloved Pokemon in the next Pokemon game for the first time ever in the series, but honestly, I think for most people, and myself included, this isn't really a huge deal breaker. Now, I think it's definitely a bummer, because I really think it devalues Pokemon games as a whole. You know, there was a sort of identity to all these Pokemon games and how you, the player, kinda grows up with Pokemon and you can transfer your beloved Pokemon in all your future adventures. Transferring Pokemon allowed people to build bonds with Pokemon, and carrying them over throughout the years was really quite a special thing. Now, personally, I've never cared to do that. I've kept all my Pokemon in their core games, but it definitely has a purpose that really can add some value for the people who are interested in that feature. So obviously, not having every Pokemon in Pokemon Sword and Shield feels kinda weird, and for some, it might really affect their experience with Sword and Shield. Now, to add insult to injury, Game Freak justified the lack of certain Pokemon by saying it would allow them to make higher quality animations and remodel the Pokemon from scratch. With that statement, however, it seems like the company may have actually dug its own grave, because people, of course, immediately started comparing trailers to games like Sun and Moon and finding out that the models for the Pokemon are the exact same. But to that I say, okay, why would we remodel Pokemon in the first place? I get that to some, this just seems like you need to always make your games better, and remaking Pokemon just goes with the idea of, hey, this is an HD game, you gotta remake everything. But realistically, what could even be done to these models to make this huge change worth it? I mean, yeah, if you're doing a hyper-realistic Detective Pikachu-esque style of creatures, maybe, but considering they're kind of keeping the same visual style, there really seems to be no point. It's not like you're just going to stretch out Pikachu's ears half a pixel to the right just so you can say you've updated the models. No, Remaking models of all 800 plus Pokemon would be stupid and utterly pointless. As an aspiring game developer myself, I can tell you, if you have over 1,000 models, you don't simply remake them for fun. I feel like this is a situation where Game Freak's PR made some mistakes that made fans want something new, when new here is honestly senseless. Now let's talk a little about the animations for the game. One of the reasons Game Freak has been under fire for Pokemon animations is that they said they were making new, more lively animations. Obviously, once again, fans have debunked this with videos comparing animations and trailers to those of Sun and Moon, and well, yes, most of them do seem to be reused. Now, here's where I lie with this issue. Remaking animations is, you guessed it, utterly pointless and stupid. Now, before you get mad at me for cutting Game Freak some slack, I do think animations in Pokemon games leave a lot to be desired. But instead of remaking X amount of animations, I think we'd better be off having a larger, more varied roster of animations. Maybe they just didn't get their point across right, but I do feel like it is a smart decision to remove Pokemon because there are just too many Pokemon to make quality content with them, honestly. Now, do they have something to show for that in the game? Definitely not. If that's the final product we're gonna get, they should have put all the Pokemon in the game. You know, I dream of a day where Pokemon would actually be like the anime, where a tackle has a full body slam animation, and where Slap isn't just a 2D hand icon popping up on screen and making a gesture. Yes, Pokemon still has some improvements to do in the animation regard, but reusing things like walking animations, basic animations, is just the smart thing to do. There's no point slightly tweaking old animations when they work just fine. Just add more animations and the combination of everything will be more lively. And to add a little to that before I move on, I think the biggest issue is animations are reused for multiple Pokemon and it feels generic. Like Blastoise using water cannon, but it's not coming out of his cannons. Stuff like that is where you could significantly improve by reducing the Pokemon count, but it doesn't seem to be something they're actually doing. Now, it's been a while at this point, but there's been lots of talk about one particular tree featured during E3's Nintendo Treehouse. That's a tongue twister of a sentence right there. Now, although extreme, this tree is a particularly good example of the graphics in Sword and Shield. Overall, I think we can all agree the graphics are just subpar to other Nintendo games on the Switch. The problem is it seems like this game engine is just Sun and Moon ++, and I think it's really this impression that creates the issues people have with Sword and Shield overall. Instead of having something that looks like a new engine, it looks like an old engine that relies on upgraded textures. Note the finger quotes here. If I was to do a parallel, I would compare this to the whole creation engine from Bethesda that I did a video on in the past for Fallout and things like Skyrim, where they just keep on upgrading this old engine from the early Xbox 360 days, and they expect it to hold up nowadays, and you get some really mixed results. This is kind of what it looks like. So with that, it looks like this engine is maybe not well suited for this wild area thing they're doing. I think it's still important, though, to point out that this is still a huge leap for Pokemon. A lot of people are saying, oh, this is practically the same graphics as Sun and Moon, but I challenge you to go play Sun and Moon again, and you'll still realize this is a massive leap. It's just not as big as a lot of us had hoped. Now, personally, I wasn't expecting much innovation for Pokemon Sword and Shield, but I was at least expecting the graphical tech to be there. I mean, that's why they made us wait with Let's Go, right? At the source of these graphics, though, I think this is mostly a problem of how the Pokemon Company always wants a yearly release. And that's what could be done with the time given. Now, this tree is just a particularly flagrant example of this lack of quality, but I have no doubts that things will still be better at release. I mean, the people who do the textures and optimization really work until the end here. So, now I've essentially covered all of the individual aspects of the controversy that we've had so far with Pokemon Sword and Shield. But if there's so much uproar for these new games, it's not necessarily because Game Freak is playing its cards vastly differently than usual. Pokemon has a much more complex problem that comes with its leap to home console. And that problem, my friend, is called hope and expectations. You see, the real problem with Pokemon Sword and Shield is that people went in expecting this first mainline console game to be the dream Pokemon game. The reality of it is, with a game that releases annually like Pokemon does, the development goal for this iteration was simply to bring the franchise to new hardware. And that alone is quite the task for the time given to development. While Let's Go was seen as a simple filler for Pokemon, Game Freak used it as an opportunity to try out some big changes to Pokemon catching. They didn't know how it would go, and for those reasons, reassured fans by telling them that the next mainline Pokemon game would instead follow tradition. So why are people mad? Probably because Let's Go made them realize that the series needs a drastic change, a breath of fresh air. Now, in my mind, it was always obvious that Sword and Shield would do the minimum to bring Pokemon to Switch. But just how X and Y was about putting Pokemon into 3D with its core roots, Sun and Moon was about trying something different and maxing out the graphical capabilities of the 3DS hardware. So what I'm trying to say is yes, Sword and Shield may be underwhelming because it doesn't live up to our vision of a console Pokemon game. But with the somewhat short development cycles for Pokemon games, this was never going to be the case. Console games just take much more resources than building Pokemon for the 3DS and for the Game Boy. The final product we're getting is something that is safe, a backup plan of sorts if the reception to Let's Go's experiments had been very poor. Equally, with 2 or 3 years of development, it's a game that still obviously needs to rely on old assets, simply upscaled. It's obvious that things can't be all started from scratch in that time period, and with the larger scope of this game's world. Yes, it does leave a lot to be desired, but most of it falls on Game Freak for setting expectations too high. And personally, if I were in charge of Pokemon, I would rather have a better game instead of a game every year. But at the end of the day, Pokemon is just business. A multi-billion-dollar business. That's why I don't expect Pokemon to slow down or take big risks anytime soon. Cause ultimately, Sword and Shield's loss is the next Pokemon game's success. And honestly, you and I both know that we're gonna pick up the game when it comes out anyway. So why should Game Freak even bother? Anyways, that's my take on this whole Pokemon Sword and Shield controversy. Now I know I've probably upset some of you with what I said today, but just know that I do understand people's frustrations. I too think Pokemon needs to really start changing things up and improving the quality of their games. So with that in mind, give me your take on Pokemon Sword and Shield in the comments below. Let me know what version you'll be picking up and what starter you're gonna be choosing. Hashtag Score Bunny Squad all the way, baby! Anyways, if you're still here after all that, I take it you enjoyed yourself here today, so consider subscribing and joining this small lovely community for more monthly gaming discussion videos and a whole lot more right here on Skullkid Gaming. With that said guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, it always helps me out. Just feel free to share the word on how Pokemon just maybe isn't totally doomed forever with your friends. Lastly, consider subscribing and check out these amazing videos on the side for much more on all things gaming. Anyways, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next video.